The shimmering towers of Zeta 9's capital reached into the eternally violet sky, a testament to the advanced technology of the warrior women inhabiting this planet. Commander Aria strode through the corridors of the High Council chamber, her metallic boots resonating against the polished obsidian floors. Clad in form-fitting battle armor, her agile frame radiated an aura of deadly elegance as she entered the circular room. The 7 members of the High Council turned their sharp gazes toward her, and Aria suppressed a shiver. Even for a seasoned warrior, the combined scrutiny of Zeta 9's most powerful women was unsettling. Commander Aria, High Counselor Vexa addressed her, her voice as cold and cutting as a blade. You have been summoned to undertake a mission of utmost significance for our empire. Aria inclined her head with respect. I am honored to serve, High Counselor. What is the nature of this mission? A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, revealing a small blue and green planet, Earth. Our long-range scans have identified this backwater world as ripe for conquest, Vexa continued. Your task is to lead a reconnaissance mission, gather intelligence on their defenses, assess their technological capabilities, and identify key strategic targets for our invasion force. Aria's heart raced with anticipation. This was the chance she had long awaited, an opportunity to prove herself worthy of joining the ranks of Zeta 9's elite warriors. I will not fail you, High Counselor, she asserted, standing tall. When do we depart? Immediately, Vexa replied. Your ship and crew await in Hangar Bay 7. Remember, Commander, the future of our empire rests on the success of this mission. Do not disappoint us. The weight of those final words was clear. Failure was not an option. As Aria marched toward the hangar, her mind whirled with strategies and contingencies. She had studied the scant information available about Earth, yet much remained unknown about this primitive world. Nonetheless, she was determined to succeed, as she always had. The sleek reconnaissance vessel gleamed under the harsh hangar lights, its angular shape bristling with concealed weapons and sensor arrays. A small crew of 5 warriors stood at attention as Aria approached. At ease, she commanded. Status report. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kira, stepped forward. All systems are green, Commander. We await your order to launch. Aria nodded curtly. Excellent. Board the ship and prepare for immediate departure. I want to be underway within the hour. As her crew filed into the vessel, Aria paused to gaze out at the sprawling cityscape beyond the hangar's force field. This mission would take her farther from home than she had ever ventured before, but she pushed aside any trace of doubt. She was a warrior of Zeta 9, and nothing would hinder her duty. The journey to Earth spanned several days, even with their advanced faster-than-light drive. Aria utilized this time to drill her crew relentlessly, ensuring they were prepared for any eventuality. They ran countless simulations of first contact scenarios, though Aria doubted the primitive Earthlings would pose much of a challenge. As they entered Earth's solar system, Aria gathered her crew for a final briefing. Remember, she said, her tone stern, we are here to gather intelligence, not to engage. Our stealth systems should keep us hidden from their primitive sensors, but take no unnecessary risks. If we are detected, we abort the mission immediately. Is that clear? A chorus of affirmatives resonated through the bridge. Satisfied, Aria turned her attention to the view screen as the blue orb of Earth loomed larger. Curious, remarked their science officer Mira. Their atmospheric composition is remarkably similar to that of Zeta 9. We should be able to breathe without assistance. Aria frowned, noting, we will maintain full environmental protocols until we can confirm the absence of harmful pathogens or contaminants. Begin scanning the planet's surface. I want to identify a suitable location for our initial survey. For hours, they orbited the planet, collecting data and observing the movements of the indigenous population. Aria found herself grudgingly impressed by the diversity of Earth's ecosystems and the sprawling cities that dotted its surface. Perhaps these humans were not as primitive as she had initially thought. However, their peaceful reconnaissance was abruptly interrupted when alarms blared throughout the ship. Report! Aria barked, springing to her feet. Kira's fingers raced over her console. We've suffered a massive power surge in our primary systems. Propulsion is offline, and we're caught in the planet's gravitational pull. Aria's mind raced. How could this happen? Their technology was far superior to anything the humans possessed. Unless, could this be a defensive system we failed to detect? What do the readings indicate? She demanded. Mira shook her head. Negative, Commander. All readings suggest this is an internal malfunction, possibly due to our prolonged exposure to the planet's unusual magnetic field. Aria swore under her breath. They were plummeting, and their options were limited. Redirect all remaining power to the emergency thrusters and inertial dampeners, she ordered. We need to control our descent as much as possible. Aim for a sparsely populated area to minimize detection risks. The next few minutes blurred into frantic activity as the crew struggled to keep their ship from disintegrating in Earth's atmosphere. Aria clutched her command chair, forcing herself to maintain an aura of calm despite the increasingly dire situation. With a bone-jarring impact, the ship crashed into the Earth, carving a deep furrow across what appeared to be an empty field. As the dust settled, Aria assessed their circumstances. The ship was a wreck, but miraculously, her crew had survived relatively unscathed. Damage report, she called out, wincing as she unfastened her safety harness. Kira limped over, a nasty gash on her forehead. It's bad, Commander. The hull is breached in multiple places, and our power core is completely fried. We're not getting off this rock without assistance. Aria's jaw tightened. This was a catastrophe. They had not only failed their mission, but were now stranded on an alien planet with no means to contact home. What about our emergency beacon? She asked, grasping at straws. Mira shook her head. The crash damaged it beyond repair. We're on our own, Commander. Taking a deep breath, Aria forced her rising panic down. She was a warrior of Zeta 9, trained to handle any situation, and she would not waver now. Very well, she said, her voice steady. Our primary objective is to repair the ship and escape this planet before we are discovered. Gather any functional equipment and supplies. We'll need to scout the area and evaluate our options. As her crew began their tasks, Aria stepped outside the wreckage to survey their surroundings. They had crashed in an agricultural region, with endless fields of grain stretching to the horizon, interrupted only by occasional clusters of trees or distant farmhouses. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, and Aria was grateful for the environmental suit integrated into her armor. Who knew what pathogens or allergens this alien atmosphere harbored? A distant rumble caught her attention, and she turned to see a cloud of dust approaching along a narrow dirt road. As it drew nearer, she recognized the outline of a primitive ground vehicle. We've got company, she called to her crew. Defensive positions now. They scrambled to conceal themselves among the wreckage of their ship, and Aria's hand hovered near her sidearm, prepared to defend herself if necessary. The vehicle, a wheeled transport, halted a short distance away, and a lone figure emerged. Aria's eyes widened in surprise. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a shock of messy dark hair. "Hello," the human called out, his voice deep and resonant. "Anyone hurt? I saw the crash from my farm and came to help." Aria exchanged glances with Kira. This was an unexpected complication. Their mission parameters strictly prohibited direct contact with the indigenous population, but given their current predicament, they might not have a choice. Making a split-second decision, Aria stepped out from her hiding place, weapon trained on the human. "Stay where you are," she commanded, her universal translator converting her words to the local language. "Make no sudden movements." The man's eyes widened in shock as he took in her alien appearance, but to his credit, he did not flee or cower. Instead, he slowly raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Whoa there," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I'm not here to cause any trouble. Name's Jake. Jake Anderson. I just want to help if I can." Aria narrowed her eyes, assessing this Jake. He appeared unarmed, and his primitive vehicle bore no signs of advanced technology. Perhaps they could leverage this to their advantage. "Do you possess repair skills?" she demanded. Jake nodded cautiously. "I'm a mechanic by trade. Been fixing cars and farm equipment since I was a kid. Your, ship looks pretty banged up. I might be able to help if you'll let me. Aria weighed her options. They needed repairs, and this human's knowledge of local technology could be invaluable. However, trusting an alien, especially a male, contradicted everything she had been taught. Commander, Kira hissed from behind her, we can't involve the natives. It's a violation of protocol. Aria clenched her jaw. Protocol be damned. They needed to escape this planet, and this human might be their only chance. Very well, Jake Anderson, she said, lowering her weapon slightly. You may approach, but know that if you make any hostile moves, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. Jake nodded, stepping forward cautiously with his hands still raised. Understood. I promise I'm just here to help. But I've got to say, this is one hell of a first contact situation. As he drew closer, Aria studied him intently. There was something intriguing about this human male. His body was well-muscled from physical labor, and his face bore the weathered look of someone who had spent much time outdoors. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. Deep, rich brown, radiating warmth and curiosity. Shaking her head, she banished such foolish thoughts. This was no time for distractions. Your assistance is appreciated, she said stiffly. I am Commander Aria of Zeta 9. Our ship has sustained severe damage, and we require repairs to return home. Jake let out a low whistle as he surveyed the wreckage. This is way beyond anything I've worked on before, but I'll do my best. I might need to call in some help, though. I've got a friend who's an electronics whiz. Between the two of us, we might be able to cobble something together. Aria tightened her grip on her weapon. Absolutely not. No one else can know of our presence here. Jake held up his hands again. Okay, just a stint. But I've got to warn you, it's going to take some time, and we can't leave this wreck out in the open. Someone's bound to notice eventually. Aria frowned. He had a valid point. They needed a more secure location to effect repairs. Do you have a suggestion? She asked, her tone indicating she expected a useful answer. Jake nodded. My farm's not far from here. There's a big barn that should be able to hide your ship. It's isolated, so we shouldn't have to worry about nosy neighbors. Aria considered the proposal. It was risky, but they had few other options. She turned to her crew, who had emerged from hiding during the conversation. Mira, can we get the anti-grav systems operational enough to move the ship? The science officer nodded hesitantly. Possibly, Commander, but it will deplete all our remaining power reserves. Once we move, we'll be entirely dependent on local resources for repairs. Aria's jaw clenched. The thought of relying on primitive human technology disgusted her, but there was no other choice. Very well, she said, turning back to Jake. We accept your offer of assistance. But know this, human. If you betray us, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. Aria watched Jake as he expertly assessed the wreckage of their ship. His hands moved deftly, tracing the scorched metal and damaged panels, while her crew remained tense, their weapons still poised and ready. The weight of her decision hung heavily on her shoulders. Allowing a human into their confidence was unorthodox, but necessity drove her actions. Can you truly help us? Aria asked, her tone cautious. Jake glanced up, his expression earnest. I can do my best, but it's going to take some serious ingenuity. Your technology is far beyond anything I've seen before, but I have a few ideas. He turned to the crew, nodding toward Kira. What's your name? Kira, she replied, her suspicion still evident. Okay, Kira, if you can keep an eye on my tools and help me find what I need, we might just pull this off, Jake said. Sure, Kira replied, though her voice held a hint of skepticism. Aria took a deep breath, observing the dynamics of her crew. They were warriors trained for battle, not for making deals with alien primitives. Still, they needed to work together. Mira, stay at the ship and monitor any incoming signals. If anything seems off, alert us immediately. We cannot afford to be discovered, she ordered. Mira nodded, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. Understood, Commander. Aria turned to Jake. Lead the way. With a nod, Jake hopped into the vehicle, a battered pickup truck with a makeshift toolbox rattling in the bed. Just give me a moment to get my gear. I'll be right back. As he drove away, Aria turned to Kira. Stay vigilant. We don't know how the humans will react to our presence, right? Just keep an eye on him, Kira replied, casting a wary glance down the road where Jake had disappeared. After a tense few minutes, Jake returned with a toolbox and several lengths of wire. Okay, let's get started, he said, hopping out of the truck with an air of confidence. As they moved closer to the ship, Jake gestured for Kira to follow. If you can help me lift that panel, we can access the main power conduit. Kira hesitated but stepped forward, following his lead. Aria watched them carefully, analyzing Jake's movements and the way he interacted with her crew. Though he appeared calm, his eyes darted around, surveying the area for potential threats. Once they managed to remove the damaged panel, Jake peered inside. Whoa, this is impressive tech. I've never seen anything like it. Aria frowned, feeling a mixture of pride and irritation. We are a highly advanced civilization, human. This ship is a testament to that. Now, what do we need to do? Jake scratched his head, his brow furrowing in thought. Right? I can jury-rig some of my gear to help bypass the damaged systems, but I'll need a few components. He looked around the wreckage. Do you have any spare parts? Anything I could use? Kira rummaged through a storage compartment and retrieved a small collection of tools and wiring. Will these work? She asked, holding them up. Jake grinned, his excitement evident. These are perfect. Just what I need to get started. He took the items from her hands and began to work, his focus entirely on the task at hand. Aria stood nearby, arms crossed as she surveyed the area. The sky was a brilliant blue, but there was an unsettling stillness around them. How long do you estimate this will take? She inquired. Hard to say, Jake replied, his brow furrowing as he concentrated. If everything goes smoothly, we could have you flying again within a day or two. But I'll need some help, especially when it comes to the electrical systems. Aria's heart sank at the prospect of waiting so long. She had anticipated a quick repair, not a prolonged endeavor. We cannot afford to be exposed for that long. What if humans discover us? Jake paused for a moment, wiping sweat from his brow. We can move the ship to my barn tonight. It's secluded, and no one will come looking there. Just a little bit of camouflage, and we'll be golden. Agreed, Aria said, her resolve firm. But we need to keep a low profile. I will not risk exposing our presence to the entire planet. As the day wore on, Jake and Kira worked in tandem, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm of collaboration. Aria kept a vigilant watch, occasionally glancing around for signs of approaching humans or animals. The quiet hum of the Earth's wildlife surrounded them, a stark contrast to the chaos that had brought them here. As evening fell, Aria's instincts kicked in. The light around them shifted, casting long shadows across the field. We need to move, she commanded, interrupting their work. Nightfall will conceal us better, but it also brings danger. Gather what you need, Jake. Right? Jake agreed, his voice tinged with urgency. Let's get this thing moving. With a combination of ingenuity and makeshift repairs, they managed to power up the ship's auxiliary systems enough to shift it. Under the cover of twilight, Aria ordered her crew to position the ship to be towed by Jake's truck. They worked swiftly, hearts racing as they maneuvered the damaged vessel through the field. Once they reached the barn, Jake helped guide the ship inside, his demeanor shifting from casual to tense as he glanced nervously at the surrounding darkness. This place is perfect, he said, stepping back to admire the concealment of the structure. No one will find it here. As they secured the doors, Aria turned to Jake. We will need to establish a perimeter. If anyone comes close, we must be ready to defend ourselves. Jake's eyes widened slightly. You really think it'll come to that? Aria's expression hardened. Given the stakes, we cannot afford to underestimate the risks. As her crew spread out to set up defensive positions, Jake looked from one warrior to the next, his mind racing with thoughts. What exactly are you guys doing here, anyway? Aria hesitated, weighing the consequences of revealing their mission. Finally, she decided to maintain a level of transparency, if only to earn his trust. We were conducting reconnaissance for a potential mission. Our civilization has identified your planet as a target for expansion. Jake blinked, processing her words. So you're here to conquer us? Not conquer. Explore. Assess. Your world holds resources that could benefit my people, Aria corrected. But I assure you, that was before we crashed here. Now our only priority is to repair our ship and leave. Jake frowned, clearly torn between curiosity and concern. And what if I don't want you to leave? What if I want to help? Aria narrowed her eyes, intrigued by the fire behind his words. Why would you want to assist us? We are not of your world, nor do we share your customs. Because, Jake replied earnestly, I can't just turn my back on you. You're in trouble, and I know what it's like to be in a rough spot. Besides, this is a chance to learn about something greater than this farm. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For the first time, Aria saw a glimmer of potential in their alliance. Then help us, she said, her voice softer. But know this. Your actions will determine whether you live or die in the face of the consequences. Jake nodded, determination etched on his face. I understand. I'm all in. As they settled in for the night, the barn felt both like a refuge and a prison. Aria glanced at her crew, who were now cautiously assessing their human ally. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would have to navigate this precarious partnership if they were to survive and return home. As shadows lengthened, Aria found herself caught between apprehension and intrigue, the promise of Earth, a world so foreign, yet strangely captivating, hanging in the air like a whispered secret. The barn was dimly lit, the flickering light from a few battery-powered lanterns casting eerie shadows on the walls. Aria stood near the entrance, her senses heightened as she listened to the sounds of the night outside. The distant hoot of an owl echoed through the stillness, punctuated by the rustle of leaves in the cool evening breeze. She turned her gaze to her crew, who were busy organizing tools and equipment for repairs. Jake, sitting cross-legged on the ground with an array of tools spread before him, caught Aria's eye. Hey, Commander, I could use a hand over here, he called, his voice carrying an informal ease that contrasted sharply with the tension of their situation. Just a moment, Aria replied, moving toward him with purpose. She could see the flicker of determination in his expression, and despite her initial reservations, she was beginning to appreciate his tenacity. As she knelt beside him, she examined the array of tools he was using. What's the plan? She asked, her curiosity piqued. I think I can jury-rig the power core to stabilize the energy flow. It won't be perfect, but it should get us enough juice to at least get off this planet, Jake explained, picking up a set of wires and connecting them to the exposed circuitry of the ship. Very well. I will assist you, Aria said, reaching for a nearby tool. Jake's face lit up with a smile, but then he hesitated, his expression turning serious. I just want you to know that I'm not doing this for any kind of reward. I genuinely want to help you and your crew. Aria paused, taken aback by his sincerity. Your willingness to assist is noted, Jake. However, you must understand that trust is a rare commodity for us. I get it, he replied, his tone steady. But I promise, I won't betray you. I'm just a mechanic trying to help. Aria nodded, appreciating his resolve. Then let us get to work. As the hours passed, they worked side by side, discussing the intricacies of their respective technologies and sharing stories about their worlds. Aria marveled at Jake's ingenuity, watching as he transformed common tools into solutions for their ship's damage. She was struck by his resourcefulness and found herself easing into the rhythm of their collaboration. With each successful adjustment, the atmosphere in the barn lightened. The initial tension between the crew and Jake began to dissipate as they witnessed his genuine commitment to helping them. Kira and Mira even exchanged glances, their skepticism gradually giving way to cautious optimism. Okay, let's see if this works, Jake said, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. He connected the final wire and stepped back, signaling for Aria to activate the systems. Taking a deep breath, Aria flipped the switch on the control panel. The ship hummed to life, lights flickering on and the engine sputtering into a tentative roar. Aria's heart raced with excitement. It's working, she exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of relief and exhilaration. See? I told you we'd get it going. Jake grinned, his confidence infectious. However, their victory was short-lived. The sudden whirring of the ship's systems drew the attention of an alarm. A warning light began to flash on the control panel, accompanied by a series of beeping sounds. "Jake, what's happening?" Aria demanded, her heart sinking. Jake's expression shifted to concern. "I don't know. It shouldn't be like this. There must be some residual damage we didn't account for." He rushed back to the panel, his fingers flying over the controls. Aria felt a wave of panic rise within her. "We must stabilize it before it attracts attention. Is there a way to shut it down?" "Give me a second," Jake replied, but his frustration was evident as he continued to wrestle with the system. Just then, Kira rushed over, eyes wide. "Commander, there's a vehicle approaching." Aria's instincts kicked in. "Jake, we need to shut it down now." Jake nodded, quickly overriding the alarms. "I'll cut the power to the systems." He reached for a lever but paused, his face pale. "Wait, if I do that, we could lose everything we just fixed." "Do it!" Aria shouted, her voice sharp. "We cannot be discovered." With a swift motion, Jake flipped the switch, and the ship went silent. The lights dimmed, leaving them enveloped in darkness, the only illumination coming from the lanterns scattered around the barn. As they crouched together, the sound of tires crunching on gravel echoed outside, sending a chill down Aria's spine. She gestured for her crew to take defensive positions, their muscles tensing as they readied themselves for confrontation. Jake, eyes wide, whispered, "What do we do if they find us?" "Stay quiet and follow my lead," Aria instructed, her heart racing as she listened to the approaching footsteps. "We'll assess the situation first." The barn door creaked open, silhouetted against the moonlight. A figure stepped inside, and Aria's heart raced as she held her breath, ready to react. "Hello," a voice called out, deep and resonant. "Is anyone here?" Aria exchanged a glance with her crew, the tension palpable. They remained hidden, watching as the figure moved cautiously into the barn. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a worn flannel shirt and jeans. The moonlight caught the glint of curiosity in his eyes as he surveyed the area. "Is this the place?" he murmured to himself, scratching his head. "I thought I saw something crash here." Aria felt the urge to spring into action, but Jake placed a hand on her arm, his expression pleading for caution. "Let him look around. Maybe you won't find anything." As the man stepped further into the barn, he paused, glancing at the shadows where they were hidden. Aria held her breath, her grip tightening around her weapon. "Just the barn," he muttered, seemingly to himself, shaking his head as he turned to leave. "Must be seeing things." As he stepped back toward the door, Aria felt a rush of relief wash over her. "We need to move," she whispered urgently to her crew. "If he's curious, he might come back." They waited until the man had exited the barn before silently slipping out the back door, maintaining a cautious distance. "Where do we go?" Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. "Let's head to the woods," Aria suggested. "It will give us cover while we figure out our next move." As they moved into the shadows of the trees, Aria glanced back at the barn, the silhouette of their ship looming behind them. They were far from safe, and every moment counted. Once deep enough into the forest, they stopped to catch their breath. "What was that?" Mira asked, her eyes wide with fear. Aria exhaled slowly, her mind racing. "Just a curious human. We cannot underestimate their ability to notice anything unusual." Jake looked thoughtful, frowning as he recalled the encounter. He didn't seem threatening. Maybe he's just a local who saw the crash and came to investigate. "Don't be naive," Kira warned, her voice sharp. "We don't know how many people live around here. If they start asking questions, we'll be in serious trouble." Aria considered their options, her instincts kicking in. "We need to lay low for a while, scout the area, and gather information about this place. Jake, you will accompany us. We need your knowledge of this world." Jake nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll help however I can. Just tell me what to do." As they set off deeper into the woods, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Aria felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Her crew's safety depended on her decisions, and the fate of their mission hung in the balance. Underneath the starlit sky, the unknown loomed ahead, filled with both challenges and opportunities. They were in a world vastly different from their own, and every moment spent in the shadows brought them closer to either ruin or an unexpected alliance that could change everything.